thank you everyone for joining today at this SEO news webinar. We'll start in a moment. Actually, we'll just get started now. There is a Ask a Question button at the bottom. That means that if you want to ask a question, please use the Ask a Question feature, because the chat is going fast and we may not be able to keep up. And in the Ask a Question section, you can also upvote other questions. So if you see a question you really like, do give it that thumbs up so that it will be asked first, because we'll go down the list and skip the ones we don't like. All right. With that, let me introduce you to our magic duo for today. On my left, I'm not sure if it's the same for you, is the guy with the shiny hair. Yeah, I was thinking about calling you white, but you're not quite there yet, Joost. Joost de Valk, founder of Yoast, and the other guy is Jono Alderson, technical SEO and digital strategist, also at Joost, and they are going to tell you everything there is to know about the SEO news today. Have fun.
Thank you, Tucker. That was lovely.
It was also like almost modest.
Nice. Nice. Reining it in.
Almost. Okay. So we've got a quite fun set of topics to talk about. We're going to start with some Google News. We have a couple of nice slides about that. If I actually click the right thing, I can actually switch to the next slide.
There we go.
Which would be helpful. Yeah, Jono, talk us through this. A product review algorithm update.
Yeah, so this is, depending on how you look at it, this is either really, really huge or might not interest you too much. So let's see. Google launched an algorithm update, as they do many hundreds of times per year. But this one got a bit of attention. And what was really interesting is it came with a bunch of documentation, which doesn't often happen. Like Google make tiny updates all the time. They don't even tell us. This one, we got a big old help page, which you can see a bit of on the slide. This is talking about improvements they've made to surfacing good reviews. So if you are reviewing products or comparing the best digital cameras or rating hotels, those sorts of things, these guidelines tell you where you need to be investing in order to do better. And the inverse, of course, is if you're not doing a great job of that, then you might struggle to rank as easily or as highly. Now, this is, even if you're not doing ratings and not in the rating space, this is worth reading. It's really fascinating because it talks very broadly about how Google think about the types of pages and content they want to reward in search. And it all comes down to quality, authenticity, depth of research. And they give a whole bunch of examples. Now, you can, if you're not in the review space, you can take these examples and just apply them more generally. They talk about things like, does this page express expert knowledge? Does it actually do the legwork to compare the data and the information? Does it discuss the drawbacks? I think this is fascinating reading and a really good primer on how do I make a good web page that really answers the user's query. So definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, it was a really big update for a lot of sites, wasn't it? It was quite a bit of news. It seems to have hit quite a few affiliates quite badly, didn't it?
Yeah, and this is the downside. So there are lots and lots of websites out there which make a living by doing research, finding niches and products and comparing and reviewing them. And many of those aren't great. Objectively, they're not brilliant. They don't add much more value than just, say, an Amazon listing page or just providing a sorted list of products. And what Google are trying to do is recognize that those pages aren't particularly valuable. They don't really do much for the user. What they really want is these in-depth reviews. So many affiliate sites, especially the kind of thinner ones that just do, here's top 10 laptops, here's the top 10 whatevers, found that they struggled. And many lost 20, 50% of their traffic overnight. Now, Is that good or bad? Kind of depends on whether that's your site or not. But I think that's a good thing for the web. It's a good thing for users who are trying to make a purchase decision on a space they don't know much about. So if you're in that space, again, depth, quality, research, genuinely explore the topic. It's not enough just to go, here's 10 affiliate links to 10 products and hope to rank, because that's going to get harder and harder.
It's not like this hasn't been in the cards for ages as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of knew this was coming, and if you've not been preparing, then well, that would really not be good.
Yeah, there's a tinfoil hat element that Google you might perceive that Google don't really like affiliates, and it's something that they're hesitant to have an opinion on. But in Google's world, what they really want to try and do is connect the user directly to the solution. So if you're acting as a kind of middleware and you're not doing a lot of value, then definitely time to reevaluate that business plan.
Yeah. Okay, then we got a feature that I loved, and it was funny to see the reaction in the SEO groups everywhere, because you immediately see the divide. Google Search Console added improved filtering, and they added regex. And well, I like regex because I know how to use it. But if you don't know regex, then it's a pretty hard way of doing things.
Yeah, and yeah, as you say, you could see the split on Twitter and elsewhere pretty quickly. So I think this is awesome. I know I've wanted this forever, as of a whole bunch of technical SEOs. So Google Search Console is getting better and better at helping you understand your site, your performance, your issues. But if you want to really explore and dig and compare and contrast, you really had to export all that raw data and run it through your own systems and third-party tools, which is clunky and cumbersome. So this is really a nice power user tool that lets you say, actually, show me all of my pages which contain the word cake, for example, but not pages which also contain the word recipe, and only if they begin with S. So you can start to construct these more complex queries and really filter and pivot your data more usefully. That's really useful when you want to do things like show me my non-brand keywords. Because it's not enough, for example, for us to say exclude the word Yoast, because there's lots of typos and plurals, and we probably don't want to exclude certain types. So you can start to define this logic and use it to really probe through and spot opportunities and issues. It's worth learning a little bit of regex to play with this, to unlock some of the power. You don't need to be a wizard. There's lots of tutorials. But yeah, this is a cool, really cool function. Good toy to play with.
Absolutely. I really like this, and it'll make my filtering a whole lot more easy.
Yep.
Then we have some Core Web Vitals updates, because those seem to be coming in by the dozen now. Let's start with their new or updated FAQs.
Oh, we've talked about this a lot, haven't we? I did a webinar last Thursday on page speed and Core Web Vitals. If you missed that, it should be on yoast.com in our webinar section, where I go into this in great depth. So I guess the brief version is Core Web Vitals are Google's shiny new metrics for analyzing page performance and quality. And the thing that they don't talk about much, and the SEO industry doesn't talk about much, is they are very much an evolving standard. This is the beginning of a long roadmap of different metrics, different underlying measurements behind the existing metrics, all sorts of ongoing change. And as a result of that, there's been a lot of discussion and confusion about how the different bits work and what happens if I measure my server rather than the page when it's visited through Google, and a whole bunch of technical nuance. That's led to a lot of confusion. This solves most of it. It's a really nice piece of reading if you're wanting to get really in depth on understanding how and where and with what technologies Google measure this sort of information. You can go and dig through, and they clarify a lot of ambiguity. Hopefully this will make its way back into the rest of the documentation so that you don't have to kind of go and do the FAQ thing. But yeah, it was good context.
Well, it's also them sort of agreeing to the fact that this might actually be hard, which plays well
Yes.
into the next bit, which is that, as you'd expect from anything that talks about speed and makes it more important, it gets postponed. Because, well, basically we've all proven not to be ready, I think, and they've said that they won't start with it immediately.
It's exactly the same thing that happened with mobile first indexing. Is Google, so in fairness, Google announced that this change was coming over a year ago. But I don't think they realized that a year isn't a long timeline in business. Like, you have a lot of priorities and currently there's a big scenario happening outside, which is affecting people's timelines and resourcing. But also there wasn't really a sense of urgency around it because people had other priorities. A year is a long time to not care about it. So now that it's 2 weeks away, I think Google have realized, yeah, that actually many websites are still slow, haven't really even noticed or thought about what they would need to do to speed it up. And it's only really the SEO industry who's saying, hey, folks, you need to get on with this. So yeah, they've pushed the deadline back. They might elongate it again. I don't think there's a huge amount of urgency from them to ship this. It's definitely still coming, and you should definitely speed your site up. But that hard deadline has been moved back to the end of August.
The funny thing is that them giving that deadline probably already improves their metrics.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, Google's reasoning, this is better for the user, right? But it is also better for them if we fix these things because their crawling becomes less intensive.
Yeah, for them, performance is synonymous with cost because crawling is a cost. I can't remember where the link is, but they do have a page somewhere in their release notes and dev documentation, which occasionally mentions something like this month, the average performance score of the whole web has increased by 0.5 percentage point. So yeah, them having set these deadlines has meant that a lot of websites have improved. The whole web has got better, just not nearly as much or as fast as they would want.
We could probably run that report ourselves from the HTTP archive. Someone should just do that monthly, that report monthly. It's actually fairly simple.
That would be fun. We should look at that.
I think this was their original post. I've just shared it in the chat. Okay, we've got more because there's lots of Google news this week. They added support for WebP and SVG in specifically the Google Video Structured Data thumbnail URL thing, but I think they added it for a couple more places where you can have thumbnail URLs. You can now use WebP files and SVG files, or you could already, but they never mentioned it in the docs. I don't know which one.
Yeah, I think that's probably closer to the truth, is it's always been technically allowed, but they haven't known. Like, it's a different team who implements schema.org than to the team who writes the documentation, to the team who talks on Twitter. Yeah, I think this has always been valid and allowed, but now it's explicit, which is good. JPEGs and PNGs are very 2012. These are better, faster standards. And there's more to come. Again, this is a changing ecosystem. But if you're wanting to compete for shiny, rich results and rich snippets, and you're using schema.org and structured data to do that, it's definitely worth making those assets as fast, as perfectly sized, as optimal as possible, because they are really going to increasingly be your homepage, your advert in the SERPs, your front of house. Yeah, every opportunity you can get to push those harder, better.
Yeah, if you're now thinking, but my WordPress site doesn't support WebP and SVG yet, we feel your pain. Yeah. And we're right there with you. And we want that to change too. I really, really, really hope that we can get those in. Within 2021, we will be able to add support for both. SVG is actually hard because it has security implications, because within an SVG file, you can have JavaScript, which basically does away with all the fun.
Yeah, and WebP was historically hard because many desktop systems like Windows don't really support it. So in fact, Facebook rolled out WebP very early on, and they found that when people were trying to download photos, like, they loaded super fast, but they downloaded them to their desktop and they couldn't do anything with them. So they rolled it back. So it's been a really slow standard to roll out.
Yeah, people are asking in the chat whether iOS and browsers support SVG. I think pretty much every browser now does properly support SVG, so you're very safe to use SVG, and I would recommend that you do when you can. This was funny. Google has announced the business profiles for stores. It shows these things now: delivery providers, order fees, order minimums, all these things, and it takes them probably from their small business or the business center or whatever it's called these days.
Yeah, the Google My Business profile. So I was thinking on this earlier. If you were to rewatch our webinars from the last 6 months or so, given an odd set of priorities. But we've definitely seen and talked about a whole bunch of steps from Google where they are increasingly showing data from individual small businesses and their products and their availability and their delivery and their reviews in the search results alongside their maps and their opening hours. There is a whole trend here for the front page and the home page of your local small business to be that rich listing in the search results. And this is just one more step in that. So now, recently with the schema stuff, for things like curbside delivery is available and individual delivery information based on origin and destination, all of this is just going out in the search results. So 2 practical things you should definitely do if you sell locally. Maybe 3. One is go and claim your Google My Business profile, set that up. We mentioned that last week. Claim all of the things you can claim in the search results. 2 is obviously use the Yoast local plugin because it gives you all the schema you need to power this. And 3 is check out Google Merchant Center, which is where you list your products to be saleable within Google, but it's increasingly becoming like a management portfolio for all of your e-commerce and product information. Go explore all of those and take advantage, because this is where you will increasingly manage all of that exposure.
Cool. Okay. And we've got more. We've actually got news related to no index tags. and this was very interesting. I mean, tell us, Jono, what happened?
Oh, yeah. So this is fast. This is SEO hitting the mainstream news, which is always interesting. So there were a bunch of health insurance sites, I think, in the US who had pages listing their prices, partly because they are legally required to do so. But what was interesting is they had hidden those pages from Google. They'd used a Meta Robots no index directive, maybe even via Yoast, perhaps, to hide those pages. So Google couldn't show those prices in the search results. And now it's been decided that that is illegal. If you have health-related pricing information, certainly in the US, you have to not hide it from search engines. And there were 2 really interesting conversations came out of this. One is it turned out the reason that they said they'd been hiding it was because they had better user journeys, where you start off on a different page, which educates you and informs you and helps you understand their pricing. Then you can go to the pricing. So this was really a problem with their business model and the way they educated users and the way they built their pages. And they didn't like people skipping their pre-sales pitch. Watch out for that. The other interesting thing that came out of it was them saying, oh, actually, it turns out this was a mistake. We've got an old website, and this is an old setting that nobody's really noticed. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it does. This does happen all the time. If you've got a website that's been around for a while, you almost certainly have pages that are no indexed or redirect when they shouldn't or have a missing tag. Go back and check through and do housekeeping regularly. Stuff like this gets missed. Check your site settings, go through, make sure you've not got weird stuff in your XML sitemap. Go through and double check all of this. But yeah, definitely more practically, don't block pricing information because you want to force users through some kind of funnel. That's not the way that users want to make purchase decisions, and you will lose to somebody who provides a better user experience. This is an anti-pattern. Yeah,
it basically be ethical in your marketing always, because it'll hit you if you don't. Okay, that was it for the Google specific bits, but we actually have some more funny or good SEO news that I really want to go through. This great article by Cyrus. Can you talk us through this?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Cyrus, if you don't know, is really well known and respected in the SEO community. He used to work for Moz, which many of you will be familiar with, and he's since an independent consultant and doing some tool stuff. He wrote an excellent article on moz.com around how to think about optimizing for SEO metrics. And there are a million ways you can do that, a million metrics you can pick. You can obsess about rankings and impressions, etc. And it's pretty messy. He had a really nice mental model, which was that you really ought to be aiming to get more clicks, which is fairly evident, but getting a higher click-through rate from the search results is a good signal that Google can use to determine good fit. But you also want to be looking at improved engagement, which are long clicks. So when people hit your pages, they're reading, they're researching, they're digesting, they're thinking, they're browsing other pages. And you want to optimize for user satisfaction. specifically to get the last click in that search. So we suspect strongly, we know that Google measure when somebody hits a web page and immediately goes back to the search engine. And that suggests they didn't find what they were looking for. But if you get that high click-through rate, you get long clicks, and you're the last click in that search, that's a really good way of reinforcing to Google that you were the fit or the solution for that user's problem. And Google can measure those experiences and use that to influence your ranking and know that you're a good fit. It's a really nice mental model. It's worth reading.
Yeah, absolutely great article. And one more that you highlighted yourself, I think, yesterday.
Oh, yes, it's from Paddy Mugan, who's a good friend who runs Era, which is a digital marketing agency. He's been in SEO forever. He wrote the book literally on link building, but this is something else. This was a really good framework for making, as it says, the perfect product page for SEO. And you can see in the picture, there's a nice example wireframe, and he breaks down all of these elements and explains why they're important, but also provide some real world examples, which is gold. I know I used to work in agency world, and I often found myself making recommendations like this, but unless you can say, here's a really good example of somebody doing this thing, it doesn't stick. So this is really good ammunition internally or externally to say, here's what good looks like and why, and further reading into all the depth of it. It's a really good resource.
Cool. So much for all the SEO stuff. We've got a bit more stuff to talk about. It's particularly in social, because Pew Research, I don't know whether you're supposed to say it like that. It does sound a bit like I'm shooting a gun, like a kid. They did research into social media use in the US, and what is absolutely fascinating is that they say it has plateaued, which given our current pandemic is weird, because it's not ever going to get higher than this. But YouTube has grown, and YouTube has actually grown quite a bit, which also, given the pandemic, isn't all that weird. But it does make you think about YouTube more and more and more. It's becoming so powerful.
Yeah, it's very easy to put the SEO hat on and forget about social media, and also to forget about video, right? Video is a complex, different format. YouTube, despite being the second biggest search engine in the world, is conveniently a different thing. But all the data says this is where people are spending time. And if it's where people are spending time, it's where they are being influenced. It's where they're starting to make purchase journeys and decisions. So wearing that SEO hat, we have to think about these environments. Now, the data definitely does suggest that it's not as simple as bet on YouTube. There are 20 significant social media platforms. There might be 30 tomorrow. They all change, they come and go. There's a point about needing to be flexible and adaptive here. But certainly you're going to want to go and understand those mediums, understand the audiences. And for any of them that have search, think about whether your brand appears, whether you're messaging people, how you're perceived. My phone's ringing, that's annoying. Yeah, so it's worth going and looking at this. Despite it plateauing, I think that might be a bit US-centric. And we know that Facebook's having some difficulties, but YouTube, emerging mediums like TikTok are still growing. So there's room to play here.
The question also is how much of this YouTube growth is driven by showing more videos in search results. I mean, a large part of that might actually be coming from search as well. So yeah, no, it is very interesting research. And well, yeah, play with it, look at it. Do keep in mind that it's US specific, and if you're not aiming at the US, it might actually be different for you. So okay, then we had some WordPress news, because there's a whole lot of stuff happening in the WordPress world, specifically full site editing. Soon we'll have WordPress 5.8, in which we will have a partial implementation of full site editing, which allows you, if you're using a full site editor compatible theme, right, Jono? I don't even know for sure, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a grey area, but yeah, your theme's going to have to support this.
Yeah. So you will be able to use full site editing, which is basically sort of like a page builder, but built into WordPress itself. And it's starting to look very good. This path is really promising. It'll just take a while to grow up. So will you use this for your huge live site? I'm guessing no, but it will be good to play with this and see what's coming and what you will be able to do with it in the future. Some of our team are working on this. I'm really excited about some of the stuff coming in here, because we will actually be able to do some of the stuff natively in WordPress that, as SEOs and as people optimizing websites for speed, we could only dream of in the past. It was things like, we'll only load the CSS for the stuff that's on the page, and we won't load the CSS for stuff that's not on the page. This might seem simple. It's actually pretty hard to do in most systems. So yeah, this is looking very interesting. It'll be available somewhere in June, if I recall the roadmap correctly. And yeah, I think this is going to be a win. You've played with it at all, Jono?
I've touched it briefly, not in the most recent iteration, but I think this is going to pave the way for something really big. So when you look at the difference between editing content with the classic editor versus Gutenberg versus block editor, it's a huge difference. So you've got this, I have a wall of text that I'm styling, versus I have blocks which can interact, which can have metadata, which can be dragged and dropped and transformed. It's a much more sophisticated, fluid experience. What full site editing will do is take your WordPress site and just make that the whole equivalent level of change. So at the moment, your WordPress site has posts and pages and attachments and a theme and plugins, and that's kind of a clunky, complex developer-y relationship. You're going to take all of that away and just say, you know what? You have screens and pages and templates, and now you can drag and drop blocks, and you can configure them and decide that logic. It will open up a whole bunch of opportunities to make websites more fluid and more interactive, and yeah, performant, which I'm quite excited about.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't think people understand yet is that we're basically replacing widgets entirely with blocks as well, which is a huge improvement, because now instead of 2 concepts, you only have to learn 1.
Yeah.
And people can just use blocks everywhere, which makes a whole lot of sense in a lot of different ways. I still see a lot of people that have something against Gutenberg really do go try it again. Honestly, it is so much better than it was when it launched. Related to the CSS changes I talked about, JetPack put out JetPack Boost, which is a couple of features basically helping you to speed up your site. And what I'm hoping is for some of this to actually hit the mainstream. The critical CSS thing that they did there, can you explain that in 2 sentences, or is it too hard?
Let's try. You only load the CSS you need to immediately show the page. You don't load all the stuff that shows things in the footer or the stuff that's not immediately visible. Yeah.
So basically, you're skipping your CSS into bits and lazy load your CSS.
Yes.
It's hard. Doing this sort of stuff is hard. It's fun to see them play with this and to push it out. I hope that some of this will actually make it to WordPress core, because I think it should be there, and we can really make WordPress faster, better for everyone. We have some more Yoast news. We did a release with Yoast SEO 16.1, which honestly was just fixes and enhancements and not really anything very huge. And then we had Yoast SEO 12.7, which made Yoast SEO work in the sidebar on Gutenberg and improved the UX quite a bit, I think, because it now doesn't have weird labels anymore, but it has labels that actually explain what it does. Sometimes we get a bit, I look at our own software and I go like, really? Did we make it that bad? Sorry about that. Let's improve that a bit. So we did. We also have been working quite a bit on video SEO in many different ways. We've updated our video SEO pages and the plugin, and we've had a great video SEO webinar with Phil which you can watch back as well on our site. And you already mentioned, Jono, your PageSpeed webinar, which you can also watch back on our site, yoast.com/webinar. They're all free. You can just go look at them. They were, well, pretty good, I think, even though I wasn't I wasn't in either of them, and I still think they're pretty good. So maybe I can sort of say that I was in this one, but admittedly, Phil did most of the talking. A podcast about improving your online video strategy is really good. If you're interested in the whole YouTube thing, then you should really go listen to this. And the podcast with Kevin Indick from Shopify is coming out tomorrow. With that, I think we can move on to questions and see if Taco is willing to come back and host us.
Ta-da!
Hey!
There he is!
There he is.
Yay! Nice. So we have a Ask a Question section where you can upvote your favorite questions, and I can clearly see that some of you already found this section because we have a heavily upvoted question, and that is, what is the best WordPress theme for SEO in 2021?
It's also the most impossible question to answer.
Yeah, it's the one that solves the needs of your website and your business, unfortunately.
Yeah, I want to say smart things here. I don't think there's one single great best WordPress theme. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, so let me translate that in typical SEO speak. It depends.
It really does. Like your theme is such an important part of your brand and your identity and your functionality. And I don't know, if your business hosts events, you're going to need a different theme from if your business sells used cars. And you really have to do that research and find one that's a good fit. Any of the ones that are popular and well rated and well reviewed will probably do reasonably similarly for SEO if you put a good SEO plugin on top of them. I know a good one. Otherwise, yeah, pick the right one for you.
All right. With that, there's last webinar we talked about possible integration with Divi. We kind of hinted on that. And of course, that's been upvoted a lot as well. So any news, any teasers yet? Look at Joost's face. You know he can't say a thing, but let's just say stay tuned.
Yeah, I can say that much. I'll definitely pass on the, hey, lots of people want to hear about this to the Divi team.
Yeah, so meanwhile, if you interact with the Divi team, do let them know that this is something you'd like. That would make our conversation a bit easier, I guess.
I know they're working on it. It's not done yet.
All right, that was definitely a teaser. All right, why Google Console doesn't show all the backlinks?
Well, it's a good question. Partly because they might not know all the backlinks, and partly because they might not want to show everything. I honestly don't know. You should ask them why they don't really show everything. I think they could in some ways show more than they currently do, but they have their reasons.
All right. So, Jono, this one is for you because you've been talking about site speed before. What would slow a website more? Adding a plugin for a WebP format or staying with the JPEG format?
Interesting. So we need to separate two thoughts. There's how slow it is on the back end when it's processing and running stuff like image conversion, and how fast it is on the front end when users are downloading smaller images. Really, as long as you've got decent hosting, yoast.com/hosting, go check it out, then the backend shouldn't be a consideration. Your site should be able to convert image formats, in which case, get the plugin, convert the images. That said, stop, because don't convert your images yourself to WebP. Go get Cloudflare and let all of that happen automatically in the cloud. Yeah.
So we've reached our monthly doses of we can't talk about Cloudflare. No, honestly, so we love Cloudflare here at Yoast, and this is not an ad because we don't get paid for this. I wish we did. But
Val,
yeah,
are you
no.
listening?
But yeah, no, get Cloudflare. It's so much easier than doing this on WordPress. And unfortunately, WordPress doesn't support it itself yet.
Yep.
All right. So if we're talking about SEO tools, AD is mentioning that he's currently using OnCrawl and is wondering if they should renew or use something else.
There's a ton, literal ton of good SEO tools out there, and it depends a bit on what you want. If you're analyzing a lot of small sites or relatively small sites, tools like SiteBulb or Screaming Frog will really give you a lot of insight. If you want a hosted solution, Right is well, they're good friends and we like them, so I would use them, RYTE. But there's definitely others as well. There are so many tools that it really depends on your use case and what you want to check, what's good for you. Honestly, for myself, I grab Screaming Frog an awful lot, and their latest update was really good. So I want to give them a shout out for that, because it actually allows you to compare crawls. So you can do a crawl and then 2 days later do a crawl again and compare what's changed. That's really neat. SiteBulb is really good too. Of course, we have an integration in Yoast SEO with SEMrush, which does some of this stuff as well. There's just a ton of good tools. Most of them are friends, so we choose to be Switzerland and not to pick.
You've mentioned all of the good ones, which if we were to make a list, we would probably suggest you pick from.
All right, and I have to, I stand corrected because I was referring to AD as he. I was corrected in the comments. That would be a she. So I'm sorry about that.
Nah, yeah, we should just default to she.
I can live with that.
And if AD was Anne Donnelly, then we're even more sorry, because
yes, I
hi,
think
Anne.
that
it's
is
been
the
a
case.
while. Anne has been in this space for like at least a decade alongside us.
Yeah, so at least Anne Donnelly was calling me out on this. So sorry. I want to know whether using keywords in the slug or in the title is helpful for SEO. A quickie, Joost, for you.
Well, yes.
Thank you.
That's why it's in our whole system of green bullets still, and it works. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so
not because it's hacky, but because describing the thing that your page is about is a good thing to do.
Yeah. It's not because you're optimizing, it's because it makes sense to do it for loads of reasons, and SEO is one of those as a result of the others.
All right, so you're actually saying that these green bullets in the plugin are there for a reason.
Yeah, you'd almost say that they're based on research and decades of experience. Oh wait, they are.
That's actually good to know. I don't think we stress that enough. Because
yeah, no, I'm not kidding when I say Anne says it's 2 decades. Well, for me, I've been in the SEO space for now just over 15 years. We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, so I think, Anne, as soon as we can travel again, it's time for a personal introduction. I will never again make this mistake. So we're going back to SVG and WebP because we have quite a few votes here as well. Does SVG make a smaller file size than WebP?
It really depends on what type of image it is. If it's a logo, like say the Yoast logo, that is pretty easy to put into SVG because it's shapes and relatively simple shapes. If it's an illustration like the one behind me, then you would use WebP and not SVG. So it really depends on what you're doing. I would just try both if you can. If what you have drawn is based on an SVG file, then you can just try both and see which one's smaller.
All right. So meanwhile, I'm cheating a bit because I saw a question by Abdul in the chat. Is Yoast only available for WordPress? Is it?
No, we have Yoast SEO for typo free. If you know what that is, it's a nice other open source CMS. And other things might be coming at some point in the future. We're definitely open to integrating into other systems as well.
Yeah, so the fun thing, knowing Joost a bit, because you've obviously attended a lot of webinars already, when he gets this sort of hidden smile on his face, you know something is up. You know you want to stay tuned because big news is coming.
At some point there will be. Yeah.
So at least check back next month, but I'd say keep an eye out on Yoast.com, subscribe to the newsletter, follow us on YouTube.
Basically, we're doing this again next month, and you should just be here next month again, because otherwise you might miss things.
All right.
It's funny, people are asking about Lottie as well in the chat I see, and Lottie is awesome. It allows you to do animated SVG. It's quite hard. We use it on Yoast.com actually in our stories, but it is pretty hard to do well.
So can we expect a webinar on Lottie then?
No, it's far too hard for me and Jono.
All right. So back to picking your darlings. Is JetPack better than WP Rocket? Well, JetPack Boost, that is.
No. I mean, JetPack Boost is relatively new, and it's not as fully featured as WP Rocket. We are big fans of WP Rocket, but also WP Rocket is not for every host either. If you're hosted on, say, SiteGround, then I would just use SiteGround's own optimization plugin, Cache Press, I think it's called. And so it really depends on where you're hosted and what is the best solution for you. Honestly, hosts should just offer you a solution like that. We are at a time now where speed is very important for everyone. And if you have a decent host, they should help you with optimizing your site.
All the best ones do.
Yeah. So basically, if your host doesn't, well, you can do the math.
Yeah.
All right. So this is actually a content SEO question. Can we
great
still
question.
Yeah, can we still ask it?
Yeah.
Jono, you like this one,
definitely.
don't you?
Yeah,
all right. So
is
Andrew is saying it's nearly impossible for me to use 200 words in a product description, let alone 300 plus. Is that a problem? And if so, do you have any advice on how to deliver more content which adds value?
So I'm going to answer this in a really roundabout, difficult way. If you're the only person selling that product and everybody needs it, 200 words is fine. If anyone else in the world is selling it and they're selling it closer or cheaper or from a more reputable brand, you have to use content to compete. Now, product content is hard, but you have to put the work in. You have to describe not only the product and everything about it, but also why you are uniquely good as a person to sell it, why your returns policy, why your delivery policy, why your warranty, why your images, all of these things influence whether or not a consumer decides, A, whether they really want to spend the money on the thing, and B, whether they want to do it with you. And the words and the images on the page are really the only thing that you have to influence that decision. So don't stop at 300 words, do 1,000 words, tell an incredible story about why the product is so good and so right for this problem and why you are the one who's best positioned to sell it at whatever price point with whatever considerations. And that in turn will make it quite challenging to make the template and the theme look and feel right. But that's what you should be aiming for. So don't struggle to get from 200 to 300. Struggle to get to the perfect page to convince the user to buy that product. It's really hard, but everyone else is doing the same thing, so you have to do it better than them.
I don't know about you guys and ladies.
He just used 1,000 words to explain why 200 is not enough.
Yes. Well, that, and also I just love when we touch on this subject, the passion that comes from Jono is just is amazing. So let's continue on that passion. Barry is asking, how does Jono feel about the deprecation of the AMP requirement for mobile top stories?
I'm just going to pick up on something in the chat first before we get into this one. There's a lot of people rightly saying people might not read 1,000 words, but some of them might. And don't use precisely 1,000 words, but use more than 200. Use enough to convince and compel and convert. And you cannot do that in 200 words. So Barry's a good friend from the SEO industry, and we agree on almost everything except for AMP, which if you watch the performance webinar from last week, you can learn all about. Barry asks, how do I feel about Google changing the policy on AMP in search results? I think this is great. So at the moment, if you want your news articles to show up in Google's top stories carousel, you have to be using the AMP format. As of shortly, that will no longer be the case. I think that's really good. I think every website should be on a level playing field, regardless of technology, if they're fast enough to be in that carousel. And that the entry criteria should just be speed and quality. And at the moment, AMP is one of the only ways that most websites can become fast and high quality enough to get in there. I really like the idea of starting to deprecate that. And in fact, the work that's gone on in AMP and behind the scenes has powered a lot of the improvements which are enabling other sites to make those changes. So yeah, this is good. This is an open web. AMP doesn't need to be privileged, but it's still a very good platform and a good tool for shortcutting performance challenges.
All right. That was even less than 1,000 words.
And he sort of made Barry happy, which is a hard thing to do with an answer about AMP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see the heart in the chat, so love it. Also, thanks Barry for answering one of the questions in the Q&A already. So we'll skip that because you nailed that. Yeah. Another good question, and that's touching local SEO, is my company serves the whole USA, but should we also optimize for local?
Okay, I'm going to answer this like the true SEO that I am. It depends. If you have physical locations, then yes, you should absolutely be optimizing for local. If you deliver, then local probably isn't all that much interesting to you in terms of optimization, but you're always going to lose some of your traffic to people that do optimize for local in specific areas. So yeah, it depends. But if you don't have actual local locations, it's pretty hard to optimize for local. You need actual stores or contact points. So if you have those, by all means, yes, go and optimize for them. It's probably a source for tons and tons and tons of traffic. If you don't have those, well, it might actually be quite a bit of work to set up local locations to just for search. You would do that for other reasons, I guess.
Right. So let me cherry pick a few of the less upvoted but very good questions.
Yeah, I will give this hint to you people. If your question is a paragraph long, then the chance of us picking it is hard because we can't stand that long. Our brains can't handle that.
Yeah, also my English breaks down after 2 sentences. So is there any information on what happens to old sites that still use widgets? Are they forced updated?
No, when you're talking about WordPress 5.8, all of that will keep on working, and you don't have to worry about any of that. It should still keep on working. We just have new options to add blocks next to widgets, basically. In a way, a lot of widgets are automatically retrofitted as blocks at that point.
All right. So completely unrelated, everyone should see a button at the bottom now, because that is the quickest way to sign up for next webinar, the next month's SEO news webinar, because we know that you want to be here again next month, and we want to make things easy as always. So just click the button and you can sign up for the webinar. We'll keep it there until the end of the Q&A. A question for, oh yeah, thank you. That's also very helpful.
Yeah, I'll just show it.
Jono, another question for you. What are the best tools for determining page speed?
Oh, that's a good question. You should go and watch the page speed webinar at yoast.com/webinar that I did, talked about extensively on this. But the short answer is Google's Page Speed Insights tool. Go and run that.
All right, let me see. Yeah, there's one. People keep upvoting, so I'll get back to it because the answer will also be referring back to our video SEO webinar. But video, the best practice, is it to keep the best speed or to keep the best resolution for your video?
I honestly wouldn't even know whether we answered that. Did we answer that in the video SEO webinar?
Sort of, I guess. So Phil talked about the stuff that we do in Yoast SEO with showing a cover over the video, but I can't remember what the terminology is for that. It's not a poster. It's what would you even call that? There is a name for it. But we
go watch the webinar.
Yeah, watch the webinar. That's the
watch the webinar. There's
loads of questions and answers about performance trade-offs and different formats and things.
All right, we'll do I think 2 more questions. Let me cherry pick. Oh, a quick one for you, since you're the chief product officer, Yoast. Does Yoast offer tools to migrate from other SEO tools to Yoast SEO?
We offer an import feature for pretty much every SEO plugin out there. And if we don't, then reach out and tell me which one we're missing, and we'll have a look at it. They might break sometimes because those other plugins change how they store their data, and then we have to rebuild them. But we usually have those, yes.
All right. So our final question for today. Okay, we'll do one more, but this is a fun one. Can I get a Yoast t-shirt? It's Christine's question.
Yeah, we really need to get that store online, don't we?
Yeah, I do think so. I'm totally not pushing my own agenda here. So thank you for asking, Christine.
I think that's a very good reason to build a Shopify store and play with that a bit. Sounds
like a plan. All right, so stay tuned. There might be a Yoast store coming for your Yoast t-shirts. I'm seeing quite a few comments in the chat already that people would love to have a Yoast shirt. So Yoast, read this. I'll also screenshot it and send it to our product team.
Yeah, well, you can send it to your product team. I would send it to the commercial team, and then they can take care of it.
Right. Yeah. Make some. 5XL, please. All right. Yeah. So we're already into the ordering phase. All right. I will roughly translate our last question for today. And that is, where do you stay up to date on SEO and WordPress news, besides obviously our webinar?
That's a good question. We actually probably read a whole ton of sites combined. So on the SEO side of things, if you want to really read everything, then follow Barry Schwartz at Rusty Brick on Twitter. But honestly, that is a lot of stuff. So that might, well, you might stop doing that fairly quickly. Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal. There's quite a couple of good resources out there next to Yoast.com, of course. On the WordPress side of things, next to Yoast.com, you have WP Tavern, Torque.
Post status, I would say.
Post status, definitely. So there's a couple there as well. We can make this would probably make a good article at some point. What are our sources?
All right.
It's interesting because for every topic we cover on this, we don't cover deliberately 3 or 4. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make the cut, which we could share still.
Yeah. So that means that if you have any questions, Your next chance to get them answered is next month. So click the button at the bottom, register for next month's webinar, and we'll be happy to see you again. Also, if you bring more friends who can upvote your question, it's more likely to be answered.
Smart.
All right. Thank you so much for today. Joost, Jono, it was fun again. And
Thanks,
see you
everyone.
again in May.
Thanks, Taco.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.